Oh man, take a look at this. This is pork carnitas. This is a wonderful dish that is served in Mexico. This meat is literally falling apart. Look at this. It's so tender. Oh man, and the flavor. Look how that breaks apart. I tell you what, watch this video. You're going to learn how to make this fabulous tasting dish. You're going to impress your friends like you've never done before. Well, hello! Welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making a traditional Mexican dish, and it is called carnitas. This dish is absolutely heavenly, and it is a wonderful flavor that you've probably never experienced before. We're going to take pork and we're going to elevate the flavors in an incredible way, and it's probably a cooking method that you've never tried. So come a little closer, let me show you all of the goodies that we have to use for this wonderful tasting dish, and let's get on with making pork carnitas. Now, for sure, if we're going to be making carnitas, we need a good piece of pork. And what I have here is a half of a pork shoulder, and it has been deboned. And I'm going to cut this netting off of it that helps to hold it in the shape of a roast. And we're going to cut it down into smaller pieces. Other items that I have here are some lard. Now, we're going to be using a whole lot more lard than this. In fact, I'll probably be using somewhere around 3 to 4 pounds of it. Now, in this cooking method, we're actually braising in lard, so don't let that frighten you. It's not like we're going to be eating the lard later. It's just going to be used as a cooking medium, and it will also be good for tenderizing the meat. It's wonderful for that. Other items that we have here to flavor this are thyme, cinnamon, oregano, cumin, bay leaves, some salt, garlic, oranges. Now here I have some small mandarin oranges. These mandarins are kind of a little wilted, and that won't matter on this because we're using these as just part of the marinade on this. And actually in Mexican culture, when they're cooking this up in a cauldron, they cook it in large copper cauldrons, they'll braise it with the oranges down in the oil or in the lard with it. So also I have here some cilantro, and we're going to be using this afterwards to flavor our tacos that we're going to make with this wonderful tasting pork dish. Now let's get right on to cutting up that meat. Okay, it's time to get on with processing our meat. Now when we're cutting a piece of meat down that's like this, and you see this kind of a webbing over it, this is a common webbing that's used by meat packers to sell pieces of meat to be cooked whole. And that's what this is actually for, was to make this into a pork roast. And that's fine. You can use any cut of pork that you would like. You can use the ears, the skin, ribs, whatever you want. It works for carnitas, okay? So what I'm going to do is just kind of separate some of this out a little bit here. There we go. Into some smaller, a little more manageable pieces. There we are. And this big boy, I think I need to just split him right down the center. There we go. The board's moving around on me a little bit, but that doesn't matter. About this, we don't have to be real pretty, but we're looking to make our chunks of meat relatively all the same size. And I want a piece of meat that's anywhere from 2 to 3 bites in size. And what I'm going to do, whenever I see two muscles growing together, I'll just divide it right on that line, like right here. And that's just real common. Now, as I cut these up into these smaller pieces, I want to go ahead and just put it all up in this bowl right here, and we're going to do a simple marinade that's going to help flavor all of this meat. So go ahead, cut up all of the meat that you have, and if you would like, pause your video here, and when you catch up with me, then we're going to go ahead and get right into working up the rest of this dish into our marinade. So finish chopping yours up. Once you've caught up with me, then restart your video. Now it's time for us to get started on our marinade. Something I didn't mention before that you're going to need in your marinade is going to be a bottle of beer. And I just pick out a nice Mexican cerveza, and that way I'm off with a really good flavor that's going to be quite authentic. Now, it's common in Mexico to use beer as a marinating agent, and it's done on fajitas, on carnitas, and on other dishes as well. So what we want to do is I'm going to start out by putting on some of the spices and herbs that we have. Now, thyme is an herb, and I'm going to put about a teaspoon down in this. Also, cinnamon. Now, cinnamon is a very robust flavor, so we want to use, there we go, about 3/4 of a teaspoon, and that's going to come out really well. Or you can just use a stick of cinnamon as well. Now, I have here some Mexican oregano, and this is really common in this dish, and I want to use about 2 to 2.5 teaspoons of that Mexican oregano. Now, if you're wondering about my measuring there, believe it or not, I have done this for so many years that I have gotten to where I can measure into the palm of my hand with great accuracy. Now, the cumin, again, a very strong flavor, very earthy flavor, and this one I only want about 1 teaspoon of. The smell of these spices and the herbs are really coming to life. I also want to put down into this 1 to 2 bay leaves. Now, I have 2 of them that are kind of a medium size here. I'm just going to break them into some smaller pieces to get better distribution of the flavor. Now, I also have down here about 5 cloves of garlic. Now, on these you want to go ahead and just remove that outer paper. Let's get over here a little bit. And once I take that outer paper off, that's pretty much all I have to do. I'm going to crush these. You're not going to get a good flavor release from garlic if you put a little clove like this down in a dish and it has not been broken open in some way or another. It's not going to leach out enough out of the outside of this, because this exterior is actually something of a waxy-like coating, and so it doesn't leach out its flavor well. So what I like to do is just to simply break them, and I'm going to do that with my knife. There we go. Get this out of our way. There. Now, with the side of my knife, I'm just going to gently press down on each one of them. Now remember, on your cutting board colors like you've seen me do here, always use the correct color for whatever food you're working with. I'm going to take my mandarins and I'm just going to cut these in half to begin with and squeeze them right down into that meat. You notice I dropped the whole rind and everything in there too. You want plenty of orange flavor. Wow, starting to take on a real nice appearance. And I rinse my hands quickly. End up with orange hands. Now, time for our beer. And like I say, any brand will work fine for this. And in a moment, I'm going to just stir all of this together. And we're going to let this marinate for a couple of hours. Anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of marinating is probably too much. But if you go from an hour to maybe 2 hours, you're really in a good spot right there. You don't want to over marinate pork because the results are very unpleasant. The pork takes on a mealy texture to it, more like a pate, and it isn't very pleasant. So there we go. Now, if you'll notice that I have not used any oil other than just that which is in the oranges, in the rind of the orange, in this. And you want to avoid that too. You don't want to put any olive oil or anything like that down in your marinade, because that oil is actually going to hinder the marinade from doing its job with the meat. So let's not do that. everything down in there. And I'm just going to let that set. I'll stir it about every 15-20 minutes. And it wouldn't hurt for me to go ahead and put a little salt in this right now also. So I'm going to start with about 1 teaspoon. We'll just let that marinate with it. This is going to be so delicious. Okay, well, let your meat marinate, and after about, let's say an hour, hour and a half, let's meet back in the kitchen, and we're going to make the rest of this happen. Okay, I've decided to pause for just a moment, and I wanted to let you know about one thing you need to take care of, and that is go ahead and get your lard into a pot. What I have here is exactly 4 pounds of lard, and you can purchase this right next to the shortening. You can also use shortening or vegetable oil, but frankly the flavor comes out best when you do it this way. Do it the original way the first time, that way at least you know what you're looking at and what flavors you're going for. So after this is finished marinating, and that's going to be in just about an hour and a half, we're going to take these chunks of meat and I'm going to just transfer them right over into our lard as we gently heat the lard. And once that lard has become melted all the way through, we're then going to place the whole pot covered into an oven at 250 degrees. So as your marinating is coming near its end, go ahead and turn your oven on to 250 and get it preheated, and that way we can move on with the rest of our dish quickly. Well, we are now nearing the end of the time on our marinating, and I have stirred this several times during this marinating process to make sure everything would get down in the juice as well to marinate appropriately. So we have a good marinade going. The odor of this is just absolutely wonderful. And what I'm going to do, I've turned on the flame underneath my pork here. So this is slowly melting. Our pork lard will turn into a nice liquid here in just a few minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and put all of these chunks right down into that. Now at this time you want to go ahead and make sure that your oven is on and preheated to 250 degrees, because this is going to go in the oven as soon as the pork goes into this. I now have my lard about halfway melted. It's coming along nicely. I can break some of these bigger pieces up some to speed this up. There we go. Now at this time I'm going to go ahead and start placing my pork right down into this. This will be absolutely delicious. So go ahead and just keep working your pork down in there. Now don't pour it in. You're not looking to get all of that beer and the marinating juices in there. You're just looking to get the meat down in this. And if you want, you can also put some of those oranges down in there too. And that will actually help flavor that lard. It'll give it an orange flavor. And that we want. There we go. So just keep doing yours this way. Once you get everything in there, we're going to be placing these in the oven. Okay, I'll put one more of those oranges in there. Now, as you can see, all of our meat is well underneath the liquid, and that is exactly what we want. I can turn off the heat on this flame. And now this is ready to go right down in our oven. Remember, 250 degrees. You can go ahead and cover this if you'd like, and we're just going to let it sit in there and slow cook for several hours. Okay, now that we have our meat in our pot, let's go ahead and get that down in our oven. Now, we will allow that to sit in there and braise for a few hours, and you're going to want to check this about every 30 minutes, and check your meat, but don't do that initially. Give it about an hour to hour and a half of cooking, and then start checking it about every 30 minutes. And you're going to check it just to see if it's finished cooking, and that's going to be simple. Put a fork in it, and if it slides off the fork easily, it's done. The braising portion of this is now finished. Mine has been going for about, I'd have to say around 5 hours now. Now, as I push the fork in, I can see the meat split apart. It's very tender, it just drops right off of the fork. I don't have to push hard. See that? And that's exactly the way I want it right there. So, what I want to do at this point is to transfer my meat from my braising pot to a pan. Now what I need this pan for is I'm going to toast off the top of this meat. I want to give it just a little bit of a crust. So that's what I'm going to do. Transfer all of this. If you would do the same. And once you get all of your meat on this other pan, we're going to put it down in an oven. And if you would like, put it under a broiler, or you can put it in an oven at about 450 to 500 degrees. Either will work fine. And the idea there is we're just going to form a little bit of a brown crust on the outside of it. This is a magnificent way to cook. Any of those oranges that I get, I'm just going to set aside. The meat is quite literally falling apart right now. It's just so tender, it's not staying together at all. I now have this pan over here. We're going to take this and put it down in our oven at 450 degrees. Well, our oven has now come up in temperature. So I'm going to take my pan, place it right in here. We're going to let it heat up. There we go. These little guys are just now out of the oven. They're still sizzling just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is to go ahead and transfer them to a bowl for serving. Some tongs here. These are the same tongs I used just a little bit ago. Some of these are going to stick a little for me. Don't worry about that too much. The whole idea here, these are probably going to be used by most folks for making tacos. And they're going to want to shred them, break them apart. So, like I say, a little bit of the sticking, it's not a big deal. And besides, it gives you something to taste. Oh my. Oh, yummy. There we have a big bowl of Mexican carnitas. It doesn't get much better than this, folks. Well, there it is. Beautiful dish. What we are going to do is to make a couple of tacos, real simple tacos, and I'm using just a heated up tortilla. And if you'll notice, what I can do with those pieces of meat is just break them apart very gently, very easily. Lovely. And I want to put some cilantro over this. Like so. There we go. And a little bit of cheese. And there we have it. Something very simple as a taco like this. Wonderful item to have. Give these a try. I think you're really going to love this. Isn't that easy? There's not a lot of work involved, there's just a lot of time involved. So this wonderful, fabulous tasting dish. Let me find a little piece of meat here. This is whatever's on top, right? This stuff is just falling apart. Oh man. I can taste every one of the spices and herbs. I can taste the beer and the orange. Just harmony of flavor. So good, so delicious. Make yourself a little taco with it. and enjoy, my goodness, the flavors that explode from it. And you add that cilantro and a little bit of cheese with it. If you want some pico de gallo or some salsa, man. I shouldn't do this to myself. Eating this tasty is just not correct. But it sure is fun. Thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking today. And thank you for watching this show. And thank you to my subscribers. Thank you very much. And you folks have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.